So what we're all gonna do is we're gonna ignore this. We're ignoring. Not April. This is March, so last month was February. February was a great reading month for me. I read a plethora of books, and the majority of them were pretty good actually. So I'm very excited to go through all of those and talk about them here in the reading wrap up, because I kind of like the reading wrap ups because you get like if you want more in-depth, of course, go to the videos that have the books that have videos, go to those videos and watch those. But here you have like a collection and you can kind of just garner from here if it's worth it or not. And if it piques your curiosity, then you can just go to the other videos. So it works out. Let me get my Goodreads up. There's a lot of them. I read 17 books this February. We're gonna talk about them. I don't know if we should just start with like the first book on the top and just do it that way. I guess we can do it that way just because there's so many books and I don't want to have to like do the pile. So let's just do it that way. So the first book on top is In 5 Years. This is by Rebecca Searle. This book is about a woman who has like the life she's always wanted. She has this wonderful boyfriend and this wonderful career path. She has an interview with this this partnership, I guess, this law firm. She's a lawyer. She has an interview with a law firm that she really wants and she knows will get her to where she wants to be. She has this like 5-year plan and everything. After the interview, she gets engaged to her boyfriend and then they kind of like drink a lot, which she's not much of a drinker to begin with. Neither of them are, but they do because they're celebrating. And then she goes to sleep and she has this dream 5 years into the future. And there's another man in the room with her and it's like weird. She doesn't have the engagement ring that she just got married with. She has like a different engagement ring and all of it's just strange. And she's just like, I am so confused, like, what is going on? And then she wakes up and it's the same night and her fiance, now fiance, is like, oh, I thought you were out for the count. I put our food in the fridge, but if you want, I can go grab it. And so for 5 years, she keeps putting off this wedding until she finally convinces herself that it was just a dream, nothing weird about it. And then she meets the guy from her dream and it happens to be her very best friend's boyfriend. I will say this is a love story. It says at the very, like the cover, it says this is a love story, but not the love story you're expecting. And I 100% agree with that. This is definitely a story on friendship and it is definitely a love story about what you would do for your friends and how far you would go to keep them happy and safe and feeling loved and all of that stuff. So I did very much like this book. I gave it 3 stars as a rating, which I know what you're thinking, like, why did you give it 3 stars if you liked it so much? The reason why I gave it 3 stars is it was kind of dragging for bits of it and none of the characters were very likable, like none of them. I had issues with a lot of them, but I had a lot of issues with our main character's boyfriend slash fiance. I had so many issues with him because he blames her a lot, like a lot throughout this book. He says that he is devoted to her and loves her, but his behavior is just so strange. And there were times where his behavior was so out of line that I personally was like, this man is having an affair. I really didn't like him because he was blaming her for putting the wedding off, even though she was like, we both didn't want to get married at this point. Like, we both were putting it off. Like, what are you talking about? It's not all on me. And then when she's going full force to get married to him, and she's like doing all of these things and she buys a dress she doesn't even like, and then she asks him, hey, can we postpone just a little bit longer so I can find a dress that I want to wear? And he accuses her again of not wanting to get married to him. And I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know. I was very frustrated with him in particular. I felt like he was just being very unfair. Do I recommend this book? Yes, I do. I really do. You will cry. I cried. It was sad. And the ending was so sad, but it's exactly what you want because it's realistic, but it's like, it was just sad. It was just very sad, and do go into knowing that. I will say that this does talk a lot about grief. This book is a great representation of what grief does to people and how other people react to it. So there was that as well. But overall, I give this 3 stars. Just once again, like the pacing of it could have been a little bit better, and then also I feel like the characters should have been a little bit more likable. I don't know. I read Shatter Me. This I read in my Faith Made Me Read It vlog, and if you haven't seen that, I definitely advise you to check that out. It was very, very fun. Faith, she's now called Simply Faith Things on YouTube, and she does like reading, but she's also talking about like gut health and stuff like that. So if you're interested in that stuff, I definitely think you should check her out. She had me reading Shatter Me. I was in a haze by the end of this book. I was so like flustered because I was like, wait, what do you mean? But what do you mean? But what does this mean? So yeah, I really, really liked it. I think it was fantastic. I love the characters. I love the building of this type of dystopian realm. This is a series. This is the first book in the series, so I am going to continue it. I have them behind me, and I think that everybody should probably pick this up. This is a great YA dystopian series as well. I think I gave it 4 stars. Let me just double check. 4 stars. I gave this 4 stars. I think the only reason why I gave it 4 stars is that there were some things that I was just very confused on. Again, this is a series, so it'll probably make more sense later down the road, but there were certain things that I was like, I don't get it. I just don't understand it. And I can't tell you what I don't get because it's definitely a spoiler. So, yeah, there are certain things, but if you have read this book and you know what I'm talking about, go ahead and hit me up and just be like, hey, are you talking about this? And I will concur and we can discuss that because I am so confused. But if you think that it's just because I haven't read the other books in the series, go ahead and let me know that in the comments down below. Just say like, hey, you just gotta keep reading. It's gonna make sense, trust me. So, but other than that, I really liked this book. It was fantastic. And yeah, I really like her writing. I do have to say, I don't always critique on writing. Sometimes it's just vibes. It depends on the book, but this one, I really have to say the writing in this was so well done. She really gets all of the characters and how they like do things and all this stuff. Also in that vlog, I read Dial A for Aunties. This was hilarious. This was such a funny book. And as someone who has immigrant parents, both of my parents are immigrants, I totally understand having that language barrier be a consistent problem and issue and people not understanding what you actually mean. I speak multiple languages. My husband speaks English. There are times when we're fighting and I forget the word, and so I just get flustered. And so we'll be having like an argument and I just won't know what the word I'm trying to say, and so then I just start crying and he's like I do think that this was a hilarious book. It is a murder mystery book, and it's just so funny. It's not even a murder mystery, you know what happened, but it's hilarious. Like, the whole thing is hilarious. She accidentally kills somebody in the first couple chapters, and her aunts plus her mom, they get together to hide the murder, and it's just one thing after another. It was so funny. I gave it 4 stars because I think just like there were certain parts that I was like, this kind of dragged on a little bit. I think we could have sped this part up a little bit more, because there were definitely times where I felt like the story was dragging on. But again, I really did like this book, and I do think that people should be reading this one. It was so funny, and I do have the sequel to it. So I think there's maybe 3 books in the series. I don't remember. But I have the second one, and I can't wait to read that one now. I also read The Housemaid in that vlog as well. This book was so trippy. I read it in 4 hours. I just like I have the hiccups. I had to jump in. I had to read it. I had to know more. I had to understand. And this book, goodness gracious me. Like, there were so many times where I was like, I don't understand. Like, what what? Wait, what? I will say that I gave this also 4 stars. I will say that the first 26% of this book, you have to get through it. Like, you have to. It doesn't feel like there's a point to it at all. But once you get to part 2, all of a sudden things start making sense. And you're like, oh. And it's so good. I really, truly loved. I loved everything about this. I love the way she did it all. Again, the first 26%, like, you're not going to read this book if you don't know someone who's already read this book. You're just not going to read it because you have to get through the first 26%. You have to trudge through it. You have to get to part 2. If you don't get to part 2, it's not going to make sense. You just get to part 2, okay? I am here telling you that if you read this book and you get to like the middle part of part 1 and you're like, why am I reading this book? It's not a thriller. I am here to tell you, just get to part 2, okay? I read Kyland in another vlog. It was the one where I was reading like not unknown authors, but like romance books that aren't talked a bunch about on YouTube. I gave this book 4 stars. This was a fantastic read. This is about these 2 high schoolers who are fighting for the same scholarship in order to go and leave their town and better themselves in their lives. They live in the Appalachian Mountains. They're both incredibly poor. This is a very poor town. Most people don't have cars. Most people don't have electricity, heating, any of that stuff. People are just, they grow vegetables in their front yard and they trade for new veggies that other people are growing and just like all of this stuff. So this book though was very heartwarming. It is a love story. It does say a love story on the cover. It is a love story and it was just so sweet. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. So I will say that the miscommunication, it does work in for this book. It had to happen. Just so you understand, like when you're reading it and you're like, oh my gosh, there's miscommunication, it has to be that way. Like it has to be that way. I will say that this book is so beautifully written. I love Mia Sheridan's writing and she has now become an automatic buy author for me. So yeah, I do recommend this. Anyone who has this on their shelf for a random reason or one way or another, please read this book if you haven't already. And if you see this out in the wild, pick it up. It's so good. You're gonna wanna read this one. It's just so beautiful. It's so beautifully written. It's so beautifully done. And I just love this story so much. Also in that vlog, I read Light in the Dark. And this book is a Moon Harbor series book 1. I gave this 2 stars. I struggled through this and a lot of it had to do with the writing style. If you were from the early Wattpad, fanfiction.net type of things, if you read that, you will love this book. Like you will absolutely love this book if you liked fan fiction. I loved fan fiction, but this is not the fan fiction that I read. I did not read this. It was, I don't know. It's a short book too. It's a very small short book. This book reminded me of Lucy Score a lot and I'm just not a big fan of Lucy Score and her writing. This felt very much like a fan fiction of Lucy Score's writing style. This book is about a girl who goes back home to Moon Harbor, Maine, and she meets up with an ex who broke her heart and they start rekindling. It is a second chance romance. There is a little bit of a mystery in there. It kind of gave Devaney Perry vibes for a little bit, but for the most part, I would say that this is a very much reminiscent of Lucy Score. So if you enjoy Lucy Score's writing, you're gonna love this book. If you like second chance romance that is kind of cheesy, you're gonna love this book. If you like fan fiction, you're gonna love this book. So all of those reasons, I think you should read this book. It just didn't do it for me. It just wasn't for me. Like, it just wasn't for me. That doesn't mean to say that I'm giving up on this author or anything like that. It just means that this particular story just didn't jive with me. But I do think that there's an audience for this one. I think that there is a strong audience for this one. Lucy Score is popular for a reason. I think that other people would enjoy this much more than I did. I read My Mechanical Romance. I read this in a romance vlog. I think it was like the first or second vlog that I did. This book is by Alexini Farrell Falmouth, who is actually Olivia Blake. Olivia Blake is a pseudonym. This is her real name, and she wrote My Mechanical Romance. This book is about two teenagers in high school, and they're on the robotics team, and it's a little like flirtation between her and him. And I think I gave this like 2 stars, maybe. I don't remember, let's find out. 2 stars. So I gave this book 2 stars. I had so many problems with it. I just felt like it was trying to politically say a lot, and it did nothing. Belle was a good character. She's our main character. She is incredibly smart. She's incredibly smart, but she's incredibly like passive aggressive, and it talks a lot about how she's just always trying to keep the peace, and she doesn't want to pick sides, and this and this and this and that and that and that. And she blames everyone but herself. And I think that got really frustrating, especially for me, just to like hear her complaining about not being able to have a voice. And I'm just like, babes, you don't want a voice. Like, you've already stated that. You don't want a voice. So why are you mad that other people are talking for you? You haven't once stood up for yourself. And it just felt very whiny. And then, you know, like there's this part towards the end where she's like decided what she wants to do with her life, finally. But it's like, honey, like there's other people that are in your shoes right now. Like other people who go to this school, who are doing similar things as you are. And they've been doing that for years. You started doing it 2 weeks ago. Like, I don't understand. And then she's just like mad about it. And I don't know, it was very frustrating. She felt like a very whiny character. And I felt like she just always wanted her way, but she didn't want anyone to know that it was actually her way. Like she was going along with somebody else, but it was actually her idea. It's very confusing. I gave it 2 stars. I read Love Redesigned by Lauren Asher. This book, first of all, ignore that sticker. I got it at Target, and I hate that this is not a sticker. Oh, it bothers me so much. But I really love this book, and I will probably just repurchase it without the sticker. I loved this book. I thought it was so cute. I love that it's a new series of hers. It's Lakefront Billionaire. And I love that it's at Wisteria, which is where Cal's story was. If you've read the Dreamland Billionaire series by Lauren Asher, Wisteria is where Cal and Alana were. And they do make several appearances in this, not several, but like they make more than one appearance in this story. And I loved that. I thought it was so fantastic. I also really liked how she handled them being Hispanic. So they would have, at the bottom here, they'll have the translations as to what they are saying in Spanish, and I loved that. I think that's so clever. You didn't lose the Mexican charm, especially as someone who is bilingual, and oftentimes when I talk to if I talk to friends who speak a similar language to me, I will insert random words. So like my sentence will not be, I wouldn't just say like, I don't know, like, oh, but why did you think that they went there? I would be like, oh, better like, why did you think that they would go there? So like I will save random words in there all the time. And I like that they did that in this too. So I'm trying to cover the sticker because I hate this sticker so much. I just don't like it. Why did they do this to us? Like, why? I feel like enough people have complained about stickers that can't come off enough that publishing companies would be like, hey, maybe we should not do that. Just saying, I'm just throwing it out there. Anyways, oh, I think I gave this 4 stars too. I think most of the books that I gave this month were like 4 stars. If you watched the vlog of me reading this book, you will know that I was not a fan of it. I didn't like it at all. I didn't like the characters. And I will say that it is mostly because I just don't see myself like hanging out with any of these people. I don't like their personalities, and I don't like their styles. That's not to say that there's a problem with it. There's not a problem with it. It's just that I would not, like, my personality would not hang out with these people. It just wouldn't work. Like, there would be so much back and forth, like, it wouldn't work. It just wouldn't work. And so for that, I gave it a pretty low score. I don't really like watching reality TV shows that much because I don't get along with their personalities. They're very confrontational, and like I just don't like watching reality TV. But if you like watching reality TV, you would probably like this book because it's a similar personality. And I think that is like something that you have to understand. Like maybe you're not going to be friends with the people on The Real Housewives of New York, but if you enjoy watching that show, or Vanderpump Rules, if you enjoy watching those shows, you understand the personalities that have to be on in those shows, and that's similar to reading this book. At least that's how I felt. That's how I felt. It wasn't for me. It might be for you though. Might be for you. You don't know. I also read The League of Gentlewomen Witches. This is a very funny romance book. It was so cute. It's about this, she's a witch, he's a pirate, and they are trying to get the same medallion, and in the process they fall in love, and it's very sweet. It's very, very charming. She's read Pride and Prejudice and Little Women, and it's a lot of like, what would Amy March do? What would this person do? What would they do? And like, it's so fun how she intertwines all of that. It is kind of a bit of a fantasy, but not really. It's more of like a realistic fantasy. There's just a couple fantasy elements in here. Nothing, very low stakes fantasy is, I guess, what I would say. Like very, very low. This is one of those like cozy reads that if you really like fantasy books, I would read this book as like in between high fantasy books. I would read this just to kind of like mellow out and cozy up to something quick, something easy. But yeah, I liked this book. I really liked India Holton as an author, and now I have finished the Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels series. So that's kind of sad, but at the same time, really, really great book. So do recommend. Oh, you know what? I did give this book a 5-star. I was like, I don't think I have any 5 stars this month. I gave this book a 5-star. This is King of Greed. This is by Anna Huang. Book made me cry multiple times. Multiple times. All the time. Just crying all the time. This book is so good. It's such a great, I don't even know how to explain it. Anna Huang was able to put into words why someone might feel underappreciated, even if the other person is doing quote unquote all the right things. She was able to really explain the female side versus the male side. And I'm not really sure how she did this, but she gave a lot of the male complaints that we hear all the time. And she was able to really put into words why women act the way that they act and the emotions behind it, the feelings of security behind it. There's a point where Alessandra asks Dominic, her husband, she asks him, or they get into like this huge fight, and she's like, you know, sometimes I don't even know, like if there was a work meeting or a home meeting, I don't know where you would go. And he was like, of course I would go home. And she's like, I don't know that. I don't believe that. I don't know that. And it's because he's always at work. Work takes over his life. He's provided for them. He's given them a beautiful home. He's obviously a billionaire. And he's given her everything she's ever wanted. And he's so confused as to why she's not happy. And she's like, it's not that you missed dinners. It's not that you missed dates. It's not any of that. It's that I was not a priority at all to you anymore. And she really does a great job of explaining like needing to feel secure in your position in your marriage, needing to always feel like you are a high priority. It's just such a great book. It's just such a great book. And I really enjoyed everything about this book. Again, once again, I cried a lot. It's about reconciliation. It's about a lot of stuff. It's about respect. It's about respecting your partner. It's about understanding where your partner is at emotionally, physically, mentally. It's about understanding priorities and how they play, boundaries, how they play. It was such a beautifully written story. It was just so great. Wow. It's just amazing. Okay, so here's the thing. I gave this book like 4.75 stars. Honestly, it could have been 4.99999999999. The only thing I had against it was this ice cream scene. But other than that, I loved this story. And this was what I was talking about. This is what I I was talking about versus this book. With this book, I didn't feel like I could hang out with any of these people outside of the book. Like I felt like they were their own little realm. I don't think that I would see them at a party and click with them. Whereas this book, I felt like we were besties. I felt like I had so many inside jokes with all of them. I felt included in their dialogue. I don't know how to explain any of this, but if you know, you know. Like when you read a book and you're like, oh my gosh, this feels like she's telling me this story personally, like we're just two friends gabbing away at a sleepover or something like that. Like that's what I'm talking about. This book is about two serial killers who kill other serial killers, and hopefully YouTube doesn't hate me for saying those things. It's so funny though, it's so good, and I really liked this book. I just loved everything about it. I love the writing style, the banter, everything, just everything, and it has just great bones, you know. It just has, that's a poor choice of words, but it really was fantastic to read. I do highly recommend anyone to read this. I will say that there is a point where the smut kind of got out of hand, and I was just like, I skipped like 30 pages before I could like find a spot that I could read again. But, and also I will also say that there is a very long list of trigger warnings, so definitely like be aware of that. But one of the really cool things is there's a playlist for this book, and it goes by chapter, which songs you're supposed to be on for the chapters. And I think that that's fantastic. It made the story even better. I felt even more immersed in it, and I could see it happening all in my head. So do recommend this one. It was fantastic. It was so great. Please pick this up if you haven't already. You've got to pick this up. You've got to read it, okay? It's so good. I read Finley Donovan Knocks Him Dead. This is by Elle Cosimano. I gave this book 4 stars. This is another really amazing, fun thriller mystery type of thing. This is like I think they call it like a popcorn thriller. And basically, if you've read book 1, you know about her husband. In book 2, somebody's put a hit on her husband and she's trying to figure out who it is without killing him. It's her ex-husband, not her husband, I'm sorry. It's her ex-husband. And all of these things are happening in the story. It's so funny. I really like Vera. I really like Finley. Vera is her like assistant slash nanny slash maid. I don't know. She's just so fun. And yeah, I can't really tell you much about this book because there's a lot of crossover into book 1. But if you know book 1 is about Finley when she is trying to write a story and somebody overhears her plot and mistakes her for being an assassin. And so they pay her a lot of money to make people disappear. And she doesn't kill anyone. It's just an accident that they happen to end up dead, and she gets paid because they think that it was her. I will say though, very funny. Very funny. I don't know. I like the way that Elle Cosimano, I like how she writes the story. I think there's just so many surprising things that happen along the way that you should very easily be able to see coming, but because they're so easy to spot, you're like, no, there's no way. There's no way. And then it happens and you're laughing because you're like, are you serious right now? It's just, please read this. Just read this whole series. I'm on the 3rd book right now. There is a 4th one that is right about to come out. If it's not out already, I don't think it's out yet, but there is a 4th one coming out soon. I do plan on reading that one. Just read these. You'll like them. I read Belladonna. This book had me in all sorts. It was so good. I think I gave this 4 stars or 5 stars. Did I give this 4 or 5? It was fantastic. Hold on, I gave it 4 stars. Very close to a 5-star though. Very close to a 5-star. This is about a girl and Death. And Death is a companion that she is just very close with. She can basically not die. She eats belladonna berries and she can see Death, be with him, but she can't die. And it's very weird. But the people around her, they do die quite a bit. So I don't know how else to explain this book. I really like the writing. This is a YA book. I don't know if you can classify this as fantasy, but it is gothic. I just don't know I don't know what this is because it's not really fantasy and it's not really like paranormal or anything like that. It's just gothic. I don't know, like it's just gothic. It's kind of like a fairy tale, actually. I think that's what I would call it. I would call it like a gothic fairy tale. She's trying to find out why people are dying, and she thinks that if she can solve this murder at the mansion that she's at now, or manor that she's at now, she thinks that if she can solve it, then she will be able to like be put at rest and like not be bothered anymore. I don't want to give too much away, but I do plan on reading Foxglove after this. I do plan on reading Foxglove. So good. So good. Just fantastic. There's only 3 books left, but I need water. I read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin, and this book is supposed to be like one of people's like top 5 books that they've read or anticipate reading. And I finally read it, and I'm gonna be honest, I thought it was boring. Like, I really struggled to make it through this book without DNFing it. I wanted to DNF it on chapter 2. Like, it just is so slow. I didn't get it. Like, it's one of those books that I'm just like, am I just dumb? Like, if everybody else seems to get it, I'm not getting it. This is about 2 friends, their relationship. One likes the other, but the other one doesn't like the other. And it's just, I don't know, it's very complicated. It's always been complicated. Their entire relationship, their entire lives have always been complicated. And I just feel like, I don't know, it went over my head at least. I don't know what to tell you, but if you are one of those people that read this book and absolutely loved this book, I would love to know in the comments why. And I'm not like saying that mean, I really honestly don't get the book. So if you could just explain it to me, maybe I would like it more. But as it stands, I think I gave it 2 stars. I gave it 2 stars. It just wasn't for me. But it could be for you. And I'm sure there are so many vlogs out there that you could watch that will tell you why this book is for you and why it was amazing. I could not tell you what this book is about. Nobody can. I don't know what this book is about. I read the book and I don't know what this book is about. And nobody else can tell me. So maybe you can though. I also read If Only You're Lucky. And this is a library book. Mine is coming in the mail very shortly. This was a book club read, and I thought I had purchased it from Waterstones, but then I looked at my thing and it was still in the cart, so whoops. Anyways, I read Only If You're Lucky. This is by Stacey Willingham. She wrote A Flicker in the Dark, and also another book that it's on the tip of my tongue, but whatever. This book was fantastic. I'm gonna give it 4 stars. This book was so well written. Like, there's so many amazing quotes throughout this book. I really struggled to not annotate this copy because it is a library book. It was so good. It was just so good. This is a book about these group of friends in college. There's Sloane, Nicole, Lucy, and then our main character is Margot. Margot had a friend who passed away named Eliza from high school. So Eliza from high school and Margot were best friends since kindergarten. And then all of these things happen and all of this fighting happens because of Levi Butler. Levi Butler is also passed away. You find out that he's also passed away in the beginning part of the book. So they are being questioned by a police officer. They're playing dumb. They have no idea what's going on. Like, honestly, they look really nonchalant, but there's a lot of like enough side comments that you're like, okay, they know something, but as the reader, you're not being told what they know. And so there is an after and there's a before. And in the before, basically Margot takes you on this journey to explain what happened after and what led up to specific deaths. And you're reading this book and like, I still have some questions. I will say the reason why I gave it 4 stars and not 5 is just because it did drag on a little bit. She talks and details everything so much that I was like, girl, we get it. Dust is dust. Dust is in the sun, glinting, glittering down. I get it. You get it. Everyone gets it. The dust even gets it. We can move on from this now. We don't need to talk about the dust bunnies anymore. I just felt like, why are we still discussing this? So, but other than that, I really loved the story. I loved the book. I loved everything about it. It was cute. It was adorable. And it was a fun read. It was a very fun read. And yeah, I think that the twists and the turns that happen in this, Lucy's character was so well done. Like, I don't know how she wrote Lucy's character. Like, I don't know how she sat down and was like, let's just make this person a person. It was so well done. And there were little breadcrumbs spread in every single chapter. You could have put this together, but I didn't. I certainly was bamboozled. At the very end, I was like, wait, I'm sorry, what? Like, I was completely bamboozled. But there were so many breadcrumbs spread in every single chapter. You are basically told in every single chapter, this is an unreliable narrator. You cannot trust this. Like, you can't trust this. And you're going through and you're like, oh, what? What? It's so good. It's so good. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I do have to return it today, which is why I'm making this video right now. But it's March 1st anyways, so it doesn't matter. I'm not reading any more books in February. It's not February anymore. So there you go. And then the last book that I have is A Day of Fallen Night. This is by Samantha Shannon. This is the prequel to Priory of the Orange Tree. Unfortunately, I gave this book 2 stars, and let me explain why, okay? I raved about the Priory of the Orange Tree. I loved that book. It was so wonderful. Everything was perfectly laid out. Every page meticulously planned. Every word inserted, just everything was so perfect. I don't think you could ever write a more perfect epic high fantasy. It's just so well done. And then I went into this thinking that it was going to be similar. It is a prequel. I do feel like, I know a lot of people want a sequel to The Priory of the Orange Tree, but I really do feel like that book is so nicely wrapped up that there really isn't anywhere else for it to go other than rebuilding what the war destroyed. But with this, it is the lead up to. And I just felt, well, for one, we didn't get to the actual point of the book until 300 pages in. For 2, I felt like this was a romance book. This is an 862-page romance book. I don't think that this is something that needed that. I mean, there was romance in Priory of the Orange Tree, and I love romance books. I just went over a ton of romance books that I just read in February. But this one, it just didn't work for me. It just didn't work for me. I was frustrated. Every single person was a couple. Every single person. And I was like, listen, I know, I get it. I do. But some of the romances didn't even make sense. They happened spontaneously, randomly, and throughout. And then all of a sudden, like, oh yeah, this is actually the love of my life. I've decided just now on this paragraph. There's no build up to it. There's nothing to tie those characters together. There's no connection. There's no inner feelings. None of it. None of it. There's one couple that happens and I'm just like, did I not read 600 pages? Like, did I miss something in those 600 pages? Like, why are they together? I don't understand. I was flustered. I don't care about the romances. They didn't add any value to the story. They didn't bring anything closer together. I felt like it was very rushed of a story. I felt very strongly that the publishing company was like, hey, the first book was so well done. We want to stay on that. And so if you could just push out another book, that would be fantastic. And so she did, and it's not well thought out. It's not at all well thought out. There's so many plot holes in this entire story. There were no plot holes in Priory of the Orange Tree that I can think of, at least. There's so many in this book. I felt like I was reading Swiss cheese. It's just very frustrating. The whole thing is very frustrating. And I also feel like it could have been $500 pages. I felt like it could have been 500 pages shorter because we already have this world built in the first book. So we already know what to expect. We already know what's going on. There was a lot of journeys that didn't need to happen because people like just come back in the next chapter anyways. I just wasn't in love with this. It wasn't my favorite. I didn't like this one. When I went in reading this book, I thought it was going to be an epic fantasy read. I thought it was going to be a quest, a journey. an adventure. There was no plot, there was no adventure, there was no journey, there was no quest, there was really nothing. Even the fantasy elements were not there like they were there in Priory of the Orange Tree. Everything just lacked. Everything just lacked. And yeah, the only things I was really surprised about were when people hooked up, and I was like very confused about that. And so for that, I have to give it 2 stars. But those are all the books that I read in February. I had such a great month though. I really liked all of the books that I did read. I mean, I liked the different genres that I read. I'm glad that I got a little bit of everything thrown in there. So I'm very, very excited. And I think March is gonna be also a really great reading month for me, just because I have a lot of really fun plans coming along the way. Because this video is already super long, I'm not gonna do my reading journal in this. It is gonna be a completely separate video. So the reading journal will be the next video that's out, where I will just update my reading journal with you guys. And in that, I will do a lot more like drawing and stuff like that. I do my husband was like, hey, you should use your second camera as a second camera when you're doing your reading journal, and have the second camera focused solely on the reading journal, so you're not just like up and down, up and down, up and down. I think that's a great idea. So that's what we're gonna do. The reading journal will be a much better version than the first time. The first time I felt, it was my first time, but like, it'll just be a lot better. So be on the lookout for that. Other than that, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, week, whatever you guys are doing. And yeah, let me know down below, how many books did you guys read this month? I wanna know which books you read this month. Did we have any crossovers? Did you see any books in this video that you were like, I'm adding that to my TBR? I would love to know. Anyways, I'm gonna let you go now. Okay, thank you, goodbye.